Interrupt your regular schedule of Time Warp Radio to present a specially broadcasted bonus episode. So today we have Dan Kuhlman from the Sure Jan Musical Theater Podcast. And okay, I wanted to introduce you as a cool man, but I figured you'd probably be a millionaire by how many times you've heard that joke, right?
I've certainly heard it more than once, yes.
But so I listened to your podcast.
Okay.
And it was your most recent If Then episode.
Oh, good. Okay, great. That was the one we just uploaded.
Yes, and I love If Then because I often ponder the many different paths my life could take and like the different options and possibilities, and if I'd chosen to do that one thing differently, like
I mean I think about that all the time. I think of the small little choices that I made 5, 10, 15 years ago that have completely changed the trajectory of my life.
But you guys, I love that you kind of came around to the sentiment of how some things are meant to be and certain events like are unavoidable, and I just loved it. So I haven't listened to all of your podcasts yet, but what I have heard I enjoy immensely.
Well, thank you. And we are admittedly long-winded. Jessica and I talk a lot, and we don't edit out a lot of what we talk about. But when we decided to do this, we decided that we really wanted to make a podcast first and foremost for us. And then if other people like it, then that's awesome. But more than anything, we are not doing this to make money or anything. We're really just doing this because it's a fun thing for us to do. So we certainly talk a lot, but I think for the most insane musical theater nerd is going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do too. I mean, each of our episodes is like 2 hours long, and I swear I can't take anything out because I love every single second of it. It's so hard to edit down our material.
No, I feel the same way, and like I have also not listened to every episode of Time Warp Radio, but I have absolutely been listening to it a lot. And even just today, I was specifically listening to the Rocky episode, for obvious reasons. But no, I think what you do is wonderful, and I just love Rocky Horror so much. And I usually only think about it one time of year, and then I kind of wait for the next year before I start thinking about it again. So your podcast is a great way for me to sort of stay in the Rocky Horror mindset until next September when we start rehearsals again.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So you have this musical theater podcast, but you also buried the lead that you are a Rocky Horror performer in the live musical theater show. Yeah. And you've done it a few years, right?
Yeah, this was our third year doing it.
Can you tell me about it? Because I know it was at the Short North Stage in Columbus, Ohio.
That's
correct. But I don't know if that's like where you're from. I want to know all about it.
Yeah, sure. So I actually grew up in Michigan, which in Ohio is hard to say out loud. And I actually work full time at Ohio State. And so to say that I'm from Michigan is something that I don't frequently tell people.
We'll keep it a secret. We promise. We won't tell anybody.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But yeah, so then after I finished my master's degree, I was looking for full-time work, and I interviewed at a couple different universities, and Ohio State sort of offered the best gig. And I didn't know anything about Columbus or the state of Ohio or Ohio State at all. I just said, okay, I guess I'm moving to Columbus, Ohio. And there's a little part of me that was a little sad about it because I've lived in so many great places before moving to Columbus, right? I spent most of my time in Michigan, but I've lived in Germany for a year. I've lived in New York City for a summer. I've lived in Los Angeles for a year. And so going to central Ohio, landlocked central Ohio, like that sounds terrible, right? But I come here, and Columbus is actually like a beautiful oasis of a place I did not expect it to be. Even though Ohio is a red state, Franklin County and the city of Columbus is a dark, dark dark blue area, which is very nice.
It's awesome.
Yeah, but more than anything, the theater scene here is absolutely insane. I might even venture to say that there are too many theater companies in Columbus, which is a weird thing to say. And during COVID, it's not many of them are particularly active at the moment for obvious reasons. But there are so many, particularly community theaters, but also professional theaters here in Columbus. So when I came here, I got really, really excited as a person who likes to perform in shows that I have all these amazing opportunities to work with hundreds of people in tens and tens of different companies. So I had done a lot of different musicals and plays, primarily musicals, both in Michigan, but also and in Germany, but then mostly here in Columbus. And I was introduced to Short North Stage, which is one of the professional theater companies. We call it the premier professional theater company in Columbus, and they do about 6 or 7 shows a year, and full scale musicals that are completely professional. They always hire an equity stage manager, and they have at least one equity actor. They do auditions in New York City as well as hire local actors here, so it's a very cool combination of working. And 2 years ago was the first time that they did the Rocky Horror Show, and the director, choreographer, who's also the artistic director for Short North Stage, Edward Kerrigan, he had done Rocky 100 million times, directing it and being in it. So he decided that he wanted to put it up and as a part of their season. So I was friends with the executive director of the theater at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to be one of the phantoms in the show, and I said, 100%,
yes.
Absolutely. So
Did I sign up yesterday?
Yeah, exactly, right? So I said, totally, I'm so here for it. I love Rocky Horror, but I thought I knew a lot about Rocky Horror, but once I started that show, I realized how little I knew. So it's through the past 3 years that I have gained such an absurd amount of knowledge. And so my first year, I did the entire thing as a phantom, which was so fun. It was there was only 4 of us. There were 3 girls and me. And then a couple months later, there were some rumors from the cast that said, "Oh, they might bring it back next year." And we thought, what? We might get to do this again? And that's something that, as a performer, you don't often get the opportunity, or you basically never get the opportunity to not only do the same show again, but do the same show in the same theater with mostly the same people again.
Yeah.
That's an experience that you don't really ever get. So when I thought I can do the same show at the same theater with I love these people. Yeah, totally. So the second year, he asked me to come back, and he said, and I did the same track again. I was a phantom. But for both years, I was also the understudy for both Frank and Rocky, year 1 and year 2. The first year, I never went on for either role. The second year, the guy who played Rocky injured himself, so he was out for 2 performances. So I actually got to go on as Rocky twice last year. And then this year, the director just said, "Dan, do you want to do Rocky the whole time?" And I said, 100%. So then this year I was fortunate enough to play Rocky for all of the performances, and it's been great.
You were gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Well, thank you. And
what an embodiment of the character, and by embodiment I mean body yaddy yaddy.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you as soon as because he asked me to be Rocky probably in, it was maybe July is when he asked me, and I've always been relatively physically fit, but I certainly eat whatever I want, and I've been known to pound a 6-pack of beer and a large pizza in one night more than once. And so when he said, "Do you want to be Rocky?" I said, "Oh, I guess I better take this seriously now." So I spent most of July and August and September and October for the most part eating well and going to the gym, and so that certainly helped with motivation. But yeah, it's such a great experience, and as of now, it's going to come back next year. So let's see what happens and what happens to theater in a world of COVID-19.
Yes.
Reserve us tickets, please.
Yeah. Oh,
You're
of course.
Already, I want to be on the list. So you've performed at the live show. Have you ever shadowcasted?
Oh, what a great question. So Rocky Horror Picture Show was certainly my introduction to it, just like it is for most people. Mm-hmm. When I was 16, and for context, I'm 30 now. When I was 16, my best friend at the time was really into the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I didn't know anything about it. And I grew up in like a relatively small town in Michigan, and there was a local like one-screen theater that was showing Rocky Horror at midnight on Halloween, as you do.
Perfect.
And they did not have like a traditional shadow cast, but you know, people certainly dressed up and knew and were able to bring props, and we did the callbacks and so on. I knew basically none of the call, other than like asshole and slut. I didn't really know any of the callbacks. So what they decided to do was, there's not a shadow cast, and there's a group of 4 of us. And they said, let's just do the floor show. Let's dress up as the floor show, and then we just memorize the choreography and the lyrics to only the floor show. Like, that was it. And so the ironic thing is, I was actually Brad, not Rocky. But that was it. So I knew the floor show in Rocky Horror, particularly Brad's verse, before I knew anything else in the show. And then it was after that I started listening to the soundtrack to the film and got really, really into it. And then over the course of the many years afterwards, I loved the movie, and I would certainly like go to dress up and go to performances of it. And I actually went as Rocky during Halloween a lot, like probably 3 or 4 years in a row before I started doing the Rocky Horror Show. I would just go as Rocky for Halloween because I had a pair of gold shorts, and I would always bleach my hair every year and just put a lot of like disgusting fake tanner on. And,
it's the easiest repeat Halloween costume.
It is. It really, really is. Yeah. And so that's how I got. And ironically, actually, when I was 16. So, Mom, if you're listening to this, shut your ears. But that was the first time I got drunk too.
That's so sweet. So, okay, so you went you went often.
Yes.
Were you always endeared to Rocky? Were you, because you also said that you understudied for Frank.
Yeah.
But, like, did you ever pull together Frank's outfits? Or were you always, like, had a love affair with Rocky as a character?
I mean, to be honest, I think the character that I like as Dan, I think I would play Brad better than any other character, honestly.
Oh.
But I've never been asked to be Brad, and Brad is typically in the first 2 years in Under the Name of Short North Stage. Brad was always the equity actor that they did. So Brad was always the dude from New York that they hired to come and do it, and who was obviously like insanely. We had 2 different Brads. We've had a different Brad every year, but they've always been just insanely talented.
I thought you were gonna say insanely good looking.
Well,
but I just have a thing for Barry Bostwick, so like I'm always hoping for a good looking Brad.
Well, I mean, to be fair, our brides have always been good looking as well, but also just really, really talented. But yeah, I mean, I love the character of Rocky. I think that he's, I think it's so like sad and poetic that the first thing that he ever says when he's metaphorically born is the sword of Damocles is hanging over my head. I think I feel bad for him that that's the first thing that he ever says, and he never really gets like a. The only time that anyone ever really shows him love is when Janet is kind of nice to him for like a minute, but ultimately her desires are driven by sex as well. So, Rocky never. I feel bad for him, but it's nice to just play someone who's at least somewhat different from you. And I would love to play Frank. I would love to do it. And, having been and performed the Rocky Horror Show 83 times now. I feel like, I honestly feel like I already have Frank's part, memorized and ready to go. But our Frankenfurter, his name is Nick Harden, and he's played Frank all 3 years, and he's just, certainly a Columbus celebrity, and people come to the Rocky Horror Show at Short North Stage every year specifically to see Nick as Frankenfurter because he's just so good. So. I would love to be Frank. I think I would be a decent Frank, but it would be really hard to live up to how wonderful he is.
Just slide a 20 across the table, and just one show, just one.
Hey, do you want to take a break one night and let me buy you a drink. You can go out for a drink, and I'll just sub.
Well, he always does say that he wants to have, like, maybe he would take, a Saturday matinee off, because this year we did 7 show weekends. We did the show once on Thursday night, and then we did 2 times on Friday night, 2 times on Saturday night, and then twice in, like, Sunday late afternoon, early evening. So
okay, I have so many questions about this because you're talking about this in a current COVID climate.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
And you have been performing before you had to make all kinds of adjustments. And how much has that had to change? And what has performing now been like?
Yeah. So, honestly, it's a great question. And I'm just so happy that we were able to get through an entire performance. So,
yes.
The theater where we perform has 2 different performance venues. There's this small little, what we call the green room, which is like a small, versatile space. And then there's the much larger, like, typical performance main stage called the Garden Theater. Rocky has always been performed in the small space in the green room, because Rocky Horror in it is just so much better as like a small intimate show. And we would just pack the audience together really tightly, and then we had like a really cool and versatile stage, but it was certainly small. And we did so much with that space, and being able to, like, especially as a Phantom, I would often reach out and, like, touch audience members because I could, because they were right there. And so this year, Rocky was kind of used as like a COVID guinea pig, if you will, to see like can we make theater at this time. So the first thing that we did is we moved it to the main stage to allow for just like so much more space, because that space is just leaps and bounds bigger than what we were performing in earlier. So that was really cool in a way, to be able to perform Rocky Horror in such a huge, giant like arena. That was really fun. But Rocky in itself, that makes it awkward for the audience for callbacks, because you have to shout so much louder to be heard. And so we did that. All the actors had masks on the entire time. We all wore either these like clear masks so you could still see everything, and sometimes we would switch in between like a mask that fit your character. So I, of course, wore a gold mask, for a lot of the show.
Of course.
And then, of course, the audience were socially distanced. We had a max of 44 people in a theater that could typically hold, maybe 250. And then, of course, the audience was also required to wear masks as well. And the interesting thing was the last musical that Show North Stage did on the main stage right before COVID happened was Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein. And so the funny, which was like a crazy coincidence. So So literally what we did is, we certainly altered the set to fit Rocky Horror a little bit more, but we basically performed Rocky Horror on the Young Frankenstein set.
But that's perfect.
Yeah,
we
that's
just
ideal.
swapped one Frankenstein musical for another Frankenstein musical, and we called it a day. So it worked out really well.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm. And that set was giant and massive, and like something that would never have been built for production of Rocky Horror, because Rocky Horror it's like part of what makes Rocky Horror so great is when it looks like a little bit cheap, like expensively inexpensive, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's got to look a little grungy.
Yes, 100%.
Well, you had said people doing callbacks in a live theater environment is very different than shouting it in a movie theater.
Yeah, it totally is.
So when you said it earlier that audience members doing callbacks and stuff, I'm like, what's that like when you're trying to sing, when you're trying to get through dialogue, and do you have audience members ever like holding you up, or like what is that like with callbacks?
There are so many nuances with it, but like at the end of the day, we would always rather have an audience that is super into the callbacks, that knows all of them, that yells them loudly and confidently, and is also just like a little bit drunk. Like if all of those things are together, that makes really for the best possible audience. It's particularly when we've done it so many times. Our first year we did that show 33 times. Like Rocky Horror, because we kept extending because people kept wanting to buy tickets, which was a great problem for a theater to have.
Yeah.
And so we ended up doing Rocky Horror. We were planning on closing just after Halloween. We ended up closing right after Thanksgiving. So
wow.
That was a really funny dichotomy, to go home, have Thanksgiving dinner, come back, get back into the Halloween mood and then keep doing Rocky Horror. But yeah, so when we're in rehearsals, we can predict what callbacks are going to happen. So then that way the actors are prepared for them to happen, but prepared for them also to not happen. So they can like pause, and if they don't happen, then just keep going. But if they do happen, pause long enough to let them get the whole line out. And one thing that we always waited for was that the very first line is, Michael Remy was ill the day the Earth stood still, but he told us where we stand. And we would wait, and we would say, are they going to say on your feet? Because if someone goes on our feet, then like...
You know it's going to be a good night.
Then we're like, oh, okay, we're here for it. But if they don't, then we're like, here we go. And, like,
they're a little bit more of a healthy, ordinary kids audience.
Yes. Yeah, healthy. Yeah. If an audience doesn't know the callbacks, it doesn't mean that they're not enjoying the show, obviously, but there's so much more of like that affirmation that you get as an actor when you hear the audience. But there are a couple that I can think of where like actors have just completely lost it on stage because the callback was so funny and we never heard it. And the one that I can remember now keep in mind the actor who played Brad, like amazing, professional, talented, nice, like just everything you want in a Brad and just in an actor in general. He got out there for once in a while. He was about to start singing the song, and someone screams from the audience, "Brad, how often do you suck dick?" And his first line is, "Once in a while," and like lost it.
You can't use that callback in the movie.
Exactly.
That's
and
so
we
good.
None of us had prepared for callbacks for once in a while because we didn't think anyone was going to know callbacks for once in a while. It was the funniest thing that ever happened. And there's
they probably had to hold in the pit. They probably
well,
needed a reaction moment.
Well, the funny part is that we used tracks for the show, and so it's all pre-recorded music that we
Okay.
Or some of it was recorded by the pit that performed the musical before Rocky Horror, the first year we did it, and that they were doing the Toxic Avenger, the musical. So they actually kept that pit behind because it's also very much a rock influenced musical, and they just said, "Hey, can you all just like stay behind real fast and record these instrumentals?" This year we had this group that came in and they were fully dressed up, like full magenta, full Columbia, like they looked wonderful, but then they just started like getting up and dancing in the aisles, particularly in a COVID world where that was not great, or they would like stand up on their chairs and then like make out with their boyfriends in front of other people and like try to touch the actors, and that was like, okay, you're taking this way too far. So
they were ready for like a shadow cast movie theater environment for sure.
Yeah, I think so. So that was a little strange, but basically, again, long-winded. To answer your question, we highly encourage callbacks, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I had another question that I wanted to ask, but you kind of answered it for me, which is what the kind of audience differences are in a stage show. Like, I imagine there's people that show up anticipating, Wicked, or
very like respectful and quiet,
or like The Lion King, and they're anticipating a more traditional musical, and then it ends up being a cult musical, and then on top of that, everybody here knows all the words. So like, do people also sing along, or like?
Oh yeah,
we're just so interested.
Yeah.
Because the music is so loud and the mics are so loud, I rarely ever hear people sing along, but we do have a moment during Time Warp where Magenta and Riff look right at the audience and they just yell, "Sing, fuckers," as loud as they can to try to get everyone to sing along. We encourage it for sure. Yeah, we do have some audience members because, Shorter Stage puts on, huge professional, six-figure shows. We do get those, your typical, I would say middle-aged,
like subscribers.
The
members of the theater.
But I love, the whole cast just loves it when we look out and we see someone in full Frankenfurter drag. Like, I'm so here for it. If I look out and I see Tim Curry cosplay, that I'm like, that is the person I'm playing to tonight. That is the one who I want to enjoy the show more than anyone else. Yeah. So, yeah, we're here for it, definitely.
That's so nice.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
So mental notes, be a little tipsy and come in costume.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I have no doubt that you two are going to know the callbacks really, really well. So I'm ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah, as shadow casters, I've definitely had the moments where you know which callbacks to expect, but there every once in a while there will be one that you just did not see coming and will totally break you.
Yes.
Those are my favorite moments.
I think the other one that I can think of that just completely broke us is Frank looks right at me, right at Rocky, and says, "I'll pull your plug out." And someone in the audience yelled, "Just like Terry Schiavo," and certainly like a very dark joke, but that was
a
one
groan and a laugh in the room.
But yes, exactly. And the first time I heard that, I was like, whoa. And like, honestly, this year, thank God I had the mask on, because if I didn't, then you would have seen me smirk and totally break. Yeah.
That's so funny.
I think both of us are insanely jealous that you got to perform this year, because the last time we got to do it was in March, and we're missing it totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I hope you get to soon. Who do you typically shadowcast as?
So me, I jump between a lot of characters, but typically Brad or Columbia.
Okay.
And I'm a through and through Janet.
Okay. Oh, I love that.
Purist.
And honestly, I love Janet Purist. I mean, I guess if you're going to use the word pure for anyone in this show, I guess. Well, I mean, you bring up a great point about the great thing about not only shadowcasts, but certainly in live productions too, is that, you know, I don't think when Richard O'Brien wrote this, I don't know that he was intentionally being inclusive, particularly the way that we use inclusion, you know, today. Mm-hmm. But Rocky Horror is a show where literally your gender identity, your race, your size, I mean, really even your age, like, none of it matters. You could play anyone can play anyone. And that's the best part about Rocky Horror.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite scene?
Oh, that's so hard. I should.
Because everyone does. They're lying if they don't. Okay, mine is touch-up. Okay.
Okay.
Says the Janet.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to myself.
Oh, well, I mean, I loved the scene too this year. Just because being Rocky, that was a really fun scene, and we gave our Janet a cat and nine tails, so she was able to start as, you know, just, you know, kind of thinking about her sexuality and what that means to her at the beginning of the song, and by the end of it, I'm literally on my hands and knees, and she is whipping me. So she goes really intense, really by the end of the song. I would say,
love it.
I mean, honestly, probably my favorite scene or my favorite song at least, is Superheroes. And
interesting.
So I mean, first of all, I love this song just because it's a really great moment for both Brad, but particularly Janet, to just belt. Like that, like Janet gets a lot of moments to show off her vocal ability, and we've had two really amazing Janets in the 3 years that we've done it. But that is the moment where whoever's playing Janet can just scream and just wail and just show how amazing her voice is.
Yes, absolutely.
But what we did, and this is kind of a little bit of a stretch, but what we did is at the very end of Superheroes, afterwards, you know, Janet and Brad, you know, walk toward each other, and Brad goes in for a kiss, and Janet stops him, takes off her ring, and gives it back to Brad, as if to say, you know, I'm calling off our relationship after this experience, after this, like, particularly this, like, sexual awakening I had. So
yes.
Then, so Janet turns around and walks away from Brad, and then that's the last time we ever see Janet for the rest of the show. And then Brad turns around the other way, takes the ring, throws it over his shoulder onto the ground, and then he takes his boa and like flips it around his shoulder and like literally just like prances off stage.
I love it.
Like full, femboy,
yes,
found this new identity. And so we kind of took this moment to decide that Brad and Janet ultimately end the relationship after this experience that they've had at different time plays. And like go on their new identities, probably with different or likely multiple people. And then after that, the interesting thing that we did is the narrator walks on, picks up the ring, and then pulls out of his jacket the same pair of glasses that Brad has been wearing the whole time, kind of to imply that maybe the narrator has been Brad the whole time, but that's like up to interpretation and so it was like letting the audience maybe discover that for themselves or not. But I just think we were able to play with it so much, which is cool.
That is such a great interpretation.
Have never ever thought of Krim as an older version of any of the other characters, that's not. I've always thought that the timeline was happening
almost simultaneously,
concurrently, right? And that the kind of theory that I'm coming up with throughout our discussion is that Krim is either a Transylvanian, and this is some sort of PSA to Transylvanians who visit Earth that this is what happens when you get hooked on heroin, or when you are too sexually liberated with the people of Earth. They're not ready for that culture shock yet.
I love that. Okay.
Or he is a fellow UFO organization chairperson Dr. Scott.
Wow.
We're kind of on both sides of that fence as of now. Those are the two theories we've come up with.
Yeah.
I think that's. I mean, I particularly love the idea that he's a Transylvanian.
Because he has the time warp instructions printed the map of the United States in a second grade classroom.
Yeah, he does. Yes, he does.
He's just so familiar with the culture that he either is a part of the culture or he's been studying it forever. And that's why there's so many affairs on his wall, is that Brad and Janet are one of
millions.
Yeah, millions of people who've been affected by Transylvanians.
And this is the story that he chose to tell tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's maybe why it's meaningless, is that
it's happened over and over and over again.
Right. We care so much about Brad and Janet's story, but if it's a commonality to our species, how special is it for these two to have gone through this experience?
I love
we
it.
have to take off our tinfoil now.
I know. We're going to unwrap it coming off.
Well, and that's what makes this. I feel like this, the last 5-minute conversation that the three of us have had, I think is the true reason on why the Rocky Horror Show or the Rocky Horror Picture Show is art. Why it's true art, because the three of us can look at it and have different interpretations of it, and maybe all of them are wrong, but also all of them are correct. And that is what's great. That's what's so awesome about it.
That's such a good way to put it. Yes, I love that. So we talked earlier about the missing content from the film. Yeah. And the more you talk about it, the more I kind of realize how much is edited and more left up for, movie audiences to interpret.
Yeah.
And specifically, Rocky has... okay, tell me about his lines that he doesn't get to say.
The first couple the first couple lines, Rocky at the very end of sort of Damocles, Frank says, "Well, that's no way to behave on your first day out." And then the callback is, of the closet.
It was a night in of the closet.
Oh, well, that too.
Oh.
Great. Honestly, both work. But then Rocky says, well, nobody's perfect, but I do think you made a pretty good job of the body work, though.
Oh.
Yeah. I think his biggest the biggest lines that he has is right before Touch It, Touch Me. Because the narrator says something about Janet saying she must like adapt and also survive. And Rocky runs out on stage and he says, oh, it's you. Oh my gosh, you're making me remember my lines from a month ago now. Says, oh, it's you. I'm hiding from my minion and his creator. They scare me. I have a feeling that all is not well here. I've been thinking a lot about Annie, and I have a feeling of foreboding. And the callback is he says, and I have a feeling of, and then from the audience you say, what's a boat for? And then I say, foreboding.
Foreboding. That's so good.
And then I say, is it true? Janet has some lines, and I think Rocky's lines are, is it true you don't like men with too many muscles? And then afterwards, Rocky says, have you got any lip gloss? Like, as if to, I guess, like, begin making out with Janet. And then Janet goes in and touch me. But, yeah.
Well, that's so interesting because my other question that I had for you is when you were performing, do you think with a Rocky brain or do you think with half of Eddie's brain?
Oh, okay. What a great way of going about it. Because, to be honest, I've never actually... Like, obviously I know that half of his brain is Eddie's brain, but our director really wanted Rocky to, like, embody your typical Californian surfer dude. So he wanted me to talk as, like, Keanu Reeves from Bill and Ted as much as possible.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Katie is currently wearing a Bill and Ted t-shirt. RN, okay? It says "Party on, dudes," to which I say, "Excellent."
Yes, literally though. I mean, he wanted me. I will admit that I was not like probably as great at it as Edward wanted me to be. But just like the whoa, it's you. I'm hiding from his minion. They scare me. Like
that's not a bad Keanu, okay?
Thank you, thanks. But that's what he really wanted to go for sure. Because at first I was playing Rocky like. In my mind, I was playing Rocky like a newborn who just happens to be like super ripped and also knows English fully. But that was kind of what I was going for, just having like this really innocent voice. And then he said, "Nope, I don't like it. Try being Keanu Reeves." And I said, "Okay, great." So that's what we went with. But I do think that would be really fascinating to look at Rocky with more of half a meatloaf brain than Eddie brain.
Yeah, have him be kind of like almost like a greaser kind of character, but just like totally ripped like bodybuilder, and he has like this totally like Elvis kind of vibe to him, and the way he talks. I think that'd be hilarious.
That's great because last year when I went on as Rocky a few times when I was a Phantom, my hair wasn't bleached. I still had my dark brown hair, and so for the line I'm making a man with, and he said with dark hair and a tan. Which I was not particularly tan, but I did have dark hair, so
tall, dark, and handsome.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But this year I went all out, and I absolutely went to this wonderful woman, this wonderful hairstylist in Columbus, and she completely bleached my hair, and it's still that color now, which is great. Now it's just my roots are showing. Yeah.
But okay, and then. Like, when you're performing, what do you think Rocky's relationship is with the other Transylvanians and with Frank and Magenta? Like,
for me, Rocky was just taking it all in. He was like, he didn't really have a relationship with anyone. For him, he is taking it all in, being scared when there's nothing else to do but be scared, and finding joy when there is, like, where he's able to find joy, and then being sexual, whatever that means, because that's really the only thing he's been taught. The Phantoms have choreography, and Brad and Janet get forced into it, and everyone on stage has, like, choreographed movement that they're doing. And I am just standing over in the corner, just basically, like, gyrating in a way that, like, if you can just think of Rocky learning to dance for the very first time.
I'm just picturing the YMCA Trump video That's all I can think of in my head.
I mean, basically that was it. And so it was just me just sort of like doing what, and like Magenta would come over and she would just like show me, you know, like if you move your hips left and right, you can call that dancing, and I would just start following whatever Magenta was doing during that. So that was really fun. No time. In fact, one of the lines that I do say right before Touch It Touch Me, when Janet discovers that Brad slept with Frank, is Rocky says out loud, "Oh, you can't trust anyone." And which is so sad for him to say because he's only been alive for 2 hours at that point. So
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you're bringing up kind of like he knows everybody has alternative motives, because something that we brought up in our most recent episode is the fact that Eddie and Rocky have definitely right brain, left brain characteristics, and Rocky definitely has more of the logical, linear thinking characteristics that it's insane. It's so funny that you're bringing up all of these points.
Yeah, his lines are him like pondering who he can trust here and what's gonna happen to him, and that he may be doomed, and he's not exactly sure how to avoid that.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, like when you think about, well, who can you trust? I mean, he only has a handful of people to choose from, because as far as he knows, no one else exists outside of these four walls, or 400 walls as it would be.
Okay, I have another. This is more, I guess, a movie question, like what you think of the movie. Where do you think Frank gets Rocky's body?
Oh, I love that. I remember hearing that in your podcast and talking, like, just thinking, is he like a fully like new human, or is he like pieces parts of different people?
Right.
Which is, I love the phrase "pieces parts" because that's always the phrase that my mom used to describe chicken nuggets when I was growing up. So like, it's just so funny. So I would say that, like, I don't think that it's pieces parts. I don't think that it's various people put together other than half of Eddie's brain. I think that Frank, in his weird, like crazy transsexual brain, has figured out he has developed a material that is skin-like, and he is because frankly, who knows what Rocky's insides look like? We don't know that Rocky has a heart. We don't know that Rocky truly has bones and muscles and veins. He just has things that on the outside look like all those things out in there.
Interesting.
So
he's just like a gelatinous body. Just
yeah, I mean, I think that Frank was able to find various materials, likely from outer space, that replicate the ideal human man on the outside using whatever he put on the inside. But I don't necessarily think it's pieces parts, because I think Frank would be disgusted at the idea that, or frankly, maybe he'd be turned on at the idea that Rocky is multiple people at once. But I like to think that he used materials from outer space to craft this being, because again, who knows what's on the inside of Rocky? What's really, frankly, important to Frank is the outside.
I love that. So I love that you said that, because I just started watching Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Carl Sagan.
He's like great follow on TikTok, by the way, if you have not.
Oh my gosh, yes. He's oh my gosh.
Yeah.
His brain. Oh man.
But anyway, you were saying, sorry.
Yeah, Carl Sagan has the quote that we are all star stuff, and that the chemical matter that builds every human being, every person in the species, is the same raw elements of iron and calcium and things that you find in outer space. So in one way or another, you are 1,000,000% right that he got Rocky's stuff from space.
Sure. Which is also just a great, I mean, like the way he puts that is, why have humans decided that some of us are better than others, when at the end of the day we're like basically all exactly the same thing with like maybe a 0.00001% difference.
Yes.
But anyway, that's a different conversation.
Oh, and we should have it 100% another.
Yes.
And since Rocky gets animated, maybe reanimated during the creation scene, but does that leave open the possibility that he can get reanimated again at the end of the show after he's been antimattered? Or does the antimatter
cancel
it? Yeah, no respawn.
I mean, I would say that the fear, at least the fear that I see in Tim Curry's eyes, but also the fear that we had in the eyes of our Frankenfurter when Rick does say it's a beam of pure antimatter, which is a great callback, so you mean it doesn't matter? But anyway, when he says that, it sounds as if, or it looks as if Frank understands that is the end-all be-all of something, that Rick has chosen the weapon that he knows that can end Frank's thing. Like, it's truly Frank's kryptonite, if you will. And so, I would say no, probably not.
Okay.
That
sure.
Rocky's probably going, this is the end of Rocky, but assuming, if Frank were to have another story, he would probably just make Rocky 2.0. And who knows if it would be the same thing or not, right? We started with Eddie and then we moved to Rocky, and who knows what the third version of it would be, but yeah. I guess Rocky 3.0.
Love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he would just build the new one up to specs with notes and feedback applied on the previous model. Yeah,
basically.
Oh, okay. And then I would be remiss to not ask you about Nina West's appearance.
Yeah, her Heels of Horror.
Yeah. That was so cool, and I had no idea what any of it was about. I just saw that she was on stage doing, I think, a Frankenfurter.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, she was kind of just doing her own thing, really. But
yeah.
So, gosh. So my relationship with Nina is long and complicated. But Nina West is a obviously she is from Columbus, Ohio. She's been a super prominent drag performer in Columbus for years and years and years. And she's also crazy philanthropic. I mean, she has raised millions of dollars for Nationwide Children's Hospital, the main children's hospital here in Columbus, as well as a million other organizations. So she has just done such good for Central Ohio. And I mean, even before COVID, she was of course traveling the world and traveling the country, but always comes back home. Always knows that this is her place. But every year she does a show called Heels of Horror, which is typically a stage show where she writes her own music, but she also uses, she'll also use popular music. It's all Halloween themed, of course. It's basically you're going to see a musical, but just Nina writes the whole show herself, and she will costumes and sets and dancers, the works. And she's had a great relationship with Short North Stage. She's done a couple things here. She's always come to see Rocky Horror every year as an audience member, and even just earlier this summer, Short North Stage did a virtual production of this off-Broadway musical called When Pigs Fly, which is just this the epitome of camp. And Nina had a featured role in that as well. But when she was doing Heels of Horror, she said, a great way to start this would be using a Rocky Horror number and using Rocky Horror cast as Short North Stage.
Oh, so, I love that.
And she, of course, has a great relationship already, so she said, can we do it? And sure. So we, after doing a full weekend of 7 shows, we then came back on a Monday, and we all went down, we all got back into costume, and they did 2 numbers. They did Frankenstein Place, and they did Time Warp. And
yes, my favorite.
And obviously the majority of characters are in it, with the exception of Eddie, Frank, and Rocky. And so what Edward, our director, said to us was, if you want to be in Heels of Horror, we'll just this isn't the actual Rocky Horror Show, this is just a publicity stunt, but also a thing for Nina. So we'll just put you in Time Warp. It doesn't matter. Sounds great. And I was like, great. And the best part was because I was a Phantom the last 2 years, I already knew the time warp choreography, because the time warp choreography is certainly similar to the film, but like it's much like more musical.
It's like amplified.
Yes, definitely. So
it's less a line dance and more musical theater choreography.
100%, it's a great way to put it. Yeah. And so Nina came and they shot Frankenstein plays sort of like in the back alley behind the theater and like this little side street next to the theater where they were really able to feature Brad and Janet and Riff. And then they came into the actual theater, and that's where we did Time Warp. And we did it like, I don't know, 7 or 8 times in a row, just like over and over and over and over again.
Did you collapse at the end, like they do in the movie?
we do collapse on the floor.
No, literally from exhaustion. You were like, I can't do Time Warp anymore.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, it was great. You know, Andrew Levitt who is Nina West, is a great friend of mine, and I was so happy to be able to do that with her, and it was just awesome. And so hopefully, I hope that next year she's able to do Heels of Horror as it's meant to be done. But
yes.
This year we were able to, take COVID and spin it around and make a great thing in a dark time.
It was so wonderful to not only follow Nina West and see it being advertised, but then have you also post that video, and we were like, wait, we know that guy.
No, wait, is that him? Wait, do the video over. Is that him? Oh my gosh, that's him.
Yeah, and it was a really cool moment, like certainly a highlight of 2020 for sure.
So cool.
I want you to plug your social media, but before we get to that, I have an ultimate question that we wanted to ask you.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I'm so nervous. Okay, great.
I hope that maybe the conversation will have stewed appropriately for it. Okay. Dan.
Yes.
The coolest man. What do you think Rocky Horror means?
Okay. It's a very difficult question, but I'm actually happy that you asked it because I actually thought about it.
Okay.
Because in our very in our short direct message exchange, that was one of the questions that you threw in there. So I did think about that a little bit.
Good.
Okay, I'm gonna say what it means in one word, and then I'm going to explain it. But my honest answer is I think Rocky Horror means sex. If I really had to pick something, that's what I would say. And I'm going to explain that more. Not so much the actual act of intercourse, but I really think that, Richard O'Brien wrote the show in, when he had downtime in his apartment or whenever it was. And he wrote it in a time where, the sexual liberations movement of the 1960s was certainly happening, and you see that through other art forms like the musical hair. And I think he wanted to use that and continue it, particularly at a time where fluid sexuality and any sort of sexual difference was not accepted at all. And I think he, in such a great way, wrote a piece of art where someone can be sexually different, whether that's who they're attracted to, or how many people they're attracted to, or how they express themselves in terms of their gender identity, and made it okay, but also in a way that people in the 1970s were able to sort of digest.
Yes, I was just going to say digest it, yes.
Yeah, because, Rocky Horror, if you did it in a serious movie musical, or just a serious movie in general, and forced it down through people's throats and say, if you're a dude and you like to wear corsets, that's okay! People would say, no, I'm not here for that. I don't like that. But if you put Tim Curry in like a humorous, corset in a funny afro wig and a big set of gaudy pearls, and make him dance around, essentially making fun of himself, while also giving that exact same message that I just said earlier, then people are going to be able to see that and say, hey, that's okay, at least for this moment. I don't know that I like that in real life, but in this moment, I like that. And
at least challenges the belief.
Yes, to a point where I don't think that we would necessarily be where we are today in 2020 if it wasn't for not only Rocky Horror, but also all the different movements that came around Rocky Horror. So like musicals like Hair and performers like David Bowie. It's because of them that, and what they did in a time where what they did was so horribly treated, that you and I are able to sit here and have this podcast right now, right? Yeah. And that I am able to, I'm able to have a full-time job at a Big Ten university and also go to a theater at night and put on, fishnets and heels and lipstick and dance around and post all about it on social media. And no one's going to question that. No one's going to fire me from my job. No one's going to disown me. And if they do, then that's frankly not people that I want in my life or a place I don't want to work. But so.
And then also the social media, you meet so many other people who, like, that wasn't a reality 10 years ago with Instagram and Facebook, where you could post, hey, I'm into this niche thing. Oh, it's actually not that niche. Like, oh, everybody has seen this movie. Oh, great. It's not just a weird thing that I saw that one time in high school. It's that weird thing everybody saw at that one time in high school.
Exactly. And so when I come to it, I say Rocky Horror means sex in the variety of different ways that one could define that word. And all of them are correct. And it's because of Rocky Horror and the other art forms that came around it that we are able to express ourselves in the way that we are today. And that's not to say that we're done, right? There's certainly more to go. But that's what I would say Rocky Horror means.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. So well put. Eloquent.
Thank you. Great. That's my dissertation.
If that was a joke, was that a joke? Or do you really have a dissertation on this?
Oh, no. Sorry. Yes, that was absolutely a joke.
No, you shouldn't. No. You should absolutely make a dissertation about it. I think you could do it.
Oh, honestly, I think that would be great. I'm not an doctor. Like, I have my master's degree. I've always considered doing a doctorate, but I don't know what I would do it in. And, I'm not, right now, I'm more into dancing sparkly dances on stage than I am at the moment. So, yeah.
Well, you can think on it a little bit.
You could become the first doctor of Rocky Horror.
There we go. I would love that. I feel, doing it, knowing the Rocky Horror show and the Rocky Horror Picture Show fairly well certainly helps.
Yes. Yes. If they had a college for it, it would have a high attendance rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, yeah. And can you tell us where we can find, like, your podcast, where we can find your social media?
Yeah,
where we
definitely.
can look at you?
The social media platform where I'm certainly most active is Instagram. And that's just Dan.Kuhlman, and my last name is spelled Kuhlman. And then the podcast that my friend Jess and I have is called Sure Jan, Sure, Jan, exclamation point. And Sure Jan is just a combination of Jess and Dan put together. And using that meme is, of course, where we got the Brady Bunch intro for our podcast. So it's kind of like a layer on a layer on a layer on a layer. But we think it's funny, and like I said, we do our podcast mostly for us, but if other people are into it, then that's great. And you can find that on any platform where you get your podcasts.
Great. And I noticed you haven't done a Rocky Horror Show episode.
No, we haven't yet. We certainly will. It's funny because we just finished recording our Addams Family episode. And so that's I'm hoping to edit that this weekend because I'll have lots of free time, obviously, this upcoming weekend. And then the next one, actually, speaking about drag, our next episode that we're going to record in December is going to be the musical Everybody's Talking About Jamie. Are you familiar?
Okay. I'm not super familiar, no.
Okay, I would encourage you to listen to it. It's a West End musical, so it's all it's very British. So there's a lot of humor that like I have to look up because I don't understand a lot of the references. But the basic plot is a boy in like a high school preparatory school in Sheffield decides that he wants to be a drag queen, and he like it's all about him like navigating that relationship while he's in high school and like navigating the relationship with his father and but like his mother is like crazy accepting and super and like bought him his first pair of heels.
Is
and,
this
like,
based off of a movie? Or is the movie based off of it?
So the musical is based off of a documentary called Jane. The name Jamie's in the title. I don't remember what the documentary is called. Like Jamie the Drag Queen or something.
Sure.
I don't remember what the documentary is called exactly.
Okay.
But it is based off of one. And then there is an upcoming film based on the musical that is going to be released in February.
Ooh.
And
So
the
then
cool
I
thing
guess
about
we
it
really
is-
do have to look it up.
Well, I mean, like, it's obviously, like, drag is a huge theme of it, which is really exciting.
Yes.
And in the, not the original West End production, but as replacements, Michelle Visage was in it at one point. She played the high school teacher of Jamie, and then Bianca Del Rio was in it as well, playing the, like,
Maybe
drag
that's
queen
why it's
mentor that Jamie
familiar.
has.
Yeah,
So
that's probably why it's so familiar to us, because we've probably heard of it multiple times.
Because
And
I love Michelle. She's just...
Oh, yeah. Completely. And what I would say to you is when you, at some point tonight, listen to the opening number. It's called And You Don't Even Know It. Just listen to it because it is the boppiest bop you'll ever hear. And
Oof,
like
I'm excited.
you're gonna listen to it and you're like you're just, your heart's gonna start pumping and you're gonna think, oh, why do I like this so much? And like, you can listen to it for 30 seconds. So I agree.
I am so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to listen. And then if you, need two obsessive super fans to talk about Rocky Horror when you eventually talk about the Rocky Horror Show, like, count us in.
I will certainly be reaching out to you. Jess and I go back and forth when we pick our musicals. So she picked Addams Family, and then I picked Everybody's Talking About Jamie. But when we get to October next year, because she picked Addams Family because of she picked it right before Halloween, so it felt like a good time to pick a spooky musical.
Appropriate.
Yeah, and I think next year our spooky musical absolutely could be Rocky Horror, and when we do talk about it, you best believe I will absolutely be reaching out to the two of you.
Well, Dan,
Thank you
thanks
so
much.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have had this conversation. Thank you both so much for inviting me. This was great.
Thanks again to Dan Kuhlman for talking with us, and thanks to you for tuning in to this special presentation. And don't forget, on Wednesdays we watch Rocky. Bye!
Bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.
How do you say it? What's the effect? Like, sure, Jan. Is that how you?
I mean, he just said, sure, Jan.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
it's fine.